The world is upside down. Hate seems to permeate the air, threatening to suffocate us all. Racism continues as a strong underlying current in our society. Black, white, how do we respond? We are tackling this intense topic today on Healthy Harmony. Welcome to Healthy Harmony, where we help you clarify and discuss health tactics to harmonize your life. I am your host and health coach, Jennifer Pickett, and today my guest is Quinton Britt. Quinton Britt was born in inner city Washington, D.C. in the 1960s, an extremely volatile time in our country. He grew up with struggle and unrest after his parents divorced when he was only 1 year of age. Throughout school, he showed tremendous skill and talent as an athlete and ended up as a high school All-American, earning scholarships to local universities. Instead of choosing football as a professional career, he selected the armed forces instead and chose to join the Marine Corps. Quinton states that this is where God shaped his standards of conduct, moral integrity, fortitude, perseverance, and leadership skills. Those standards, skills, and most importantly, his belief in God would come to serve him greatly as he has been met with numerous tragedies in life. In 1982, he accepted his call to ministry and went on to minister with prison ministry and street ministry. Since that time, he has served in many capacities in the church, including pastor, teacher, deacon, pastoral care, children's ministry, just to name a few. He currently serves as night chaplain at Banner University Center in Phoenix, covering many of the tragedies and traumas that so often occur, as well as serving as hospice chaplain. He lives with his wife, Lori, and their daughter, Jada, outside of Phoenix, Arizona. Hugh, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, you're welcome. It's an honor to be here.
I have to tell our listeners real quick, I am so excited to have you on because when I have gotten to spend time with you and Lori, every time you speak, every time I'm honored to hear you speak, even if it's a casual conversation in your kitchen, I have to confess, I usually end up taking notes because it's that impactful. So I'm that odd friend that says, okay, wait a minute, I'm going to that's good stuff. I'm going to take notes. So I'm really excited for us to have this conversation today. Thank you for giving me your time. You know, I went in a little bit into your background, but I want people to hear more about what you do every day as a chaplain, specifically as a trauma chaplain. What does every day look like for you? I know you work with some really tough situations.
Yes, I do, Jennifer. Thank you for asking. So my job at the hospital at night has to do with ministering not only to patients but also to staff. And one of the things that's most important to me is how can I bring a sense of peace and comfort to them all, because everybody's traumatized by an event. Most of the times when things happen, we focus on the patient, which is rightly so.
Mm-hmm.
But then everybody else get what you call collateral damage, because we all see ourselves in that position. And
Yes.
There's a common denominator amongst the staff and everyone that we want to help. But to get help means you get a little messy. So a part of what I do at night is I try to be aware of all of those layers, the staff, how it affects the staff, how it affects the patient, how it affects the families, how it affects the doctors, how it impacts the hospital as a whole. So it's a lot of layers that you have to constantly triage or sort of think through to make sure that I have a pulse on it and do the best I can to help them through it. Some of the things that happens at night, same thing that happened in the day happens at night. We have people that end of life, so we do end of life care. It's changed dramatically now since we had the COVID-19, and I think it's going to be a paradigm shift in how we do visitors and family care. I think we're going to really have to think through that.
Yeah.
Because I don't believe COVID is going to go away per se. I think we're going to have to learn to live with it, because as I thought through some of the other things that we've had when we had HIV and AIDS and Ebola and Salmonella, and I mean, we had to learn how to coexist with them without being paralyzed by them. But this is a little different, and I think this is one sort of like 9/11 is going to cause us to have to relook at how we do things.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
one of the things that we do is, again, the end of life care. So we minister them and them. And also we have, people steal code at night. So in cold blues, I go and help the patient and the staff. Sometimes that's very hard on the staff if it doesn't go well, or just the fact that it happens because we have nurses at different levels of experience. Some of them are new and they'll be their first one. So I try to be attentive to that, watch their body language and watch their reactions to kind of see what that is, and always check in and see how they are, to do what I can to do that. And then the other thing we have is the actual traumas that come in. And you get different levels, whether it's gunshot wounds, whether it's, suicide attempts, gang violence, you name it. I mean, whatever happens outside comes to the hospital.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
all of those things come, auto accidents. So we go in and we minister to them and do what I can to help them through it. And a part of what I do in each case, the framework is a little different. So when I go in for traumas, let's say it's an auto accident, then mostly it's about family communication, trying to connect that person with his family, because the event that just occurred, the people that love him the most may not know it. So
Oh,
what we
goodness.
try to do is get the information to try to contact them to make sure they know where they are, to link up the family, and then try to help them to navigate the next steps as the information becomes available as they finish their medical assessments, and then make sure the doctors, we help facilitate the families in doctors' conferences so they can come in and give them updates, and then I help the family in transitioning from going from the trauma bay to the actual room where that patient will be staying, or whatever the next steps would look like for them. So, and then with the cold blues, generally when the family is called because they're not there, or if they are there, I go alongside of them to help. If they aren't there, then we would get on the phone and call them, and then I would meet them and escort them up to the room and try to help them through that process. And depending on if the person recovers from it, or if they transition, then I take the time and spend with them and walk through those pieces. Sometimes it's bereavement care and next steps, with the mortuary. I walk through all of that with them as well. There's times when they sort of not necessarily getting worse, but not getting better. So then we have the conversation around palliative care, sort of like the bridge of care, where we can't medically cure them per se. It may be something they have to live with, but it's not imminent that they'll die from it. So then we try to have the conversations around palliative care. So it's a lot of navigation and
Most
understanding the
definitely.
systemic resources that's available, and trying to help connect the family with those resources, and trying to advocate for them and the patient without telling them what to do. I allow them to choose, but I just want to make sure that it's an informed decision, and then try to help them to understand the medical terminology, or the way the doctors or the nurses explain things and what that exactly means, because every
It's so
profession has its own
overwhelming.
jargon. Yeah.
Yes, very overwhelming for those families.
Yeah, so then I try to explain, do you know what it means when they say we maxed out on presses? Do you know what that means? And some, because we say things and we have an understanding of it in the hospital, but when you come to somebody and maybe they don't haven't been to hospital in 40 years, or haven't had any traumatic events, they just thinking, okay, just do it. That's what you do. I said, well, one of the things and I would just try to slow it down a little bit for them.
Yeah.
I said, so when you hear them say max out on presses, what that means is that this medicine goes in and it restricts the blood flow to the extremities in order to perfuse the main organs. And they can't do that forever, because when we go beyond that time, I said, the way you'll be able to tell is you start looking at the fingertips. When you start seeing the fingertips turn purple and blue, then you know that they can't hold the space for long. When you keep saying, keep going, and when they start turning black, what that means is it may not come back, and they may have to amputate.
My
So,
goodness.
sometimes, to hear it and say I want it and then understand what you're asking for is two different things. So I kind of my goal is to work with them in that area to make sure they fully understand what that means, because everything it won't be the way you used to know it. It could be totally different if they come through that.
It sounds like you're communicating such difficult things, whether it's the fact that someone is at the end of their journey here on earth, or you're trying to comfort nurses, which I think it can often get overlooked, is just the medical staff and how that impacts them when someone has a full code, and maybe things do not work out well. So it sounds like you're constantly communicating some very tough news for folks. And I hear the care and the compassion in your voice. How do you keep going, doing this on a daily basis, and working in the middle of tragedy and trauma every single day? What is it that keeps you going?
Well, Jennifer, for me, I try to keep my life simple. I don't try to make it complicated. So some of the things I'm gonna say I don't think it's earth shattering. I just think there's some basic things that help us will help me to stay focused. And one of my things is belief determines behavior. What we believe determines how we respond and how we act and how we live out in life. And what's most important is what we believe about God. So what keeps me going and how I cope with all of this is my relationship with the Lord. So I believe that the ground and the position that God has given me is holy ground. That's the way I see it, because only God can change people's hearts. Only
You're
God
so
can
right.
move and touch people
So right.
in a way to really shift it, because it doesn't really matter what I say. It doesn't matter what kind of educational level I got and all the schooling and all of that. But only God moves a person to see your intent, your motives, and the only way that I can help them is by loving them the way that God would love them, or see them through God's eyes, to know what they need, to be able to be empathic with them, to sense and to read them and to understand what the deeper needs is, whether they get it or don't. I have to really engage them, but in order to do that, I have to be open to the Holy Spirit. So what keeps me and allows me to do what I do day in and day out is my personal relationship with the Lord. And that's as it should be for all of us, that it's an ongoing process. We're daily growing in having this relationship. So I believe that God is sovereign. I don't believe that anything that happens in our life that he forgot about us. I don't think he didn't know about it, because we can't say that we serve God, i.e., one that knows everything. He's everywhere present equally at the same time and has all power. And he's all loving. He can't, and all wise, and he's all just. He can't be all of these things and totally forget about us.
You're so right. But Q, how would you respond to that person who says, okay, how can a good God, someone who is sovereign, how can he allow these things to happen? How would you respond to that person?
So when a person responds that way, and I would say, I love that. I first would encourage them. I say, I really like you asking those questions, because to me, this is when the breakthrough comes. This is when real answers come. When we get real and when we start peeling the layer of the onion back now. Now we're getting below all the surface stuff, the me and mine, how I feel good. Now I'm getting into, why am I here? Why do I live? These are existential questions. This is when the change takes place. So that's when I get in. When they said, well, and I said, I'm glad you asked that. So a part of this idea of how could a God have this, I said, well, let's put it like this. You can't have authentic love without real choice. In other words, you can't make someone love you. God has given us what we call a free will. He's given us the ability to choose, to live a life, and to have, to make choices, which I think is one of the most powerful things we have, is choice.
Yes,
to make choices, and how we choose determines our direction or our destiny and how we go. In whatever aspect of your life, your choices matter. So if you choose to love God, or if you choose not to love God. So now when things start happening and go south, we have to understand that the scripture tells us, and it speaks about that we are in a fallen world because God gave Adam and Eve a real choice.
Yeah.
They had to choose to obey him or not. So when they chose not to obey, when they disobeyed, that set on an onslaught of what we suffer now, what we call sin or separation from God. So when they start speak about having how could God let this happen? It's not so much as him letting it happen, but it's a result of the choices that were made that we now have to live through. And a part of those, the result of those choices that we live through is that people choose. Like, for example, a person that drinks and drive. We know that we shouldn't do that. We did studies on it. But, well, I mean, we know it now, but before I think it's the late 70s when MAD came up, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers,
Yes.
when we really got laws changed. But before then, they was doing it, and things were happening. But my point is, at this day and time, we know that we shouldn't do it, but people still do it. But they're making choices. So if you have a family that's coming home, well, let's say me, I'm coming home from work early in the morning. Someone has been drinking and driving. They made a choice to do that. So now this person runs a red light and hit me, and I'm at that light, and I go to the hospital, I pass away, lose a leg, whatever, any of those outcomes that's not good. Then when I say, how can I let God, this person had a choice. He made a choice to do that. God allows that choice. He doesn't take away the choice. We're not robots. So the reason why bad things happen is because there's sin in the world. There's evil in the world. There's a lot of decisions, a lot of choices that are made that affects others. Sometimes it happens to us. Sometimes it's a result of what we do to others. And sometimes there are things that we don't necessarily have like the way cancer come on some people. We don't know. It could be environmental. It could be socioeconomic. I mean, it's a lot of things that happen when you're eating bad food and sugar, and just so many things that influence the thing. So it's so easy to say God did it, but we absolve all of the other things that influences it.
God, you're so right. I really like how you put that. You said you can't have authentic love without real choice, and that your choices matter. And I think sometimes we kind of take that out of the equation. And I think sometimes it's because we're so angry and we're so upset. So speaking of anger, the hate literally just seems to permeate the air. First of all, tell me how you are doing in the middle of this. What are some of your thoughts and your feelings as you turn on the news? How are you doing? First of all,
I'm doing okay with it because I guess I've seen this many times.
mm-hmm.
And trying to think of a way to say this and to be kind. I don't. It doesn't bother me. I don't really see it that way. And the reason why I say I don't see it that way, because yes, I believe that there is racism. And when I say racism, I'm not talking about individual white person that hates me, directly. I think it's systemic. It's at a larger level. It's how the system, our country, the whole setup, and how they see it. So I think it's a systemic approach to this, and I believe that the demonstrations and the things that they're doing, I understand that they're trying to bring attention to it, so I have no problem with the peaceful protest because we're trying to draw attention to it. But all of the rioting and stuff that goes with that, it sort of contaminates the approach, and it just kind of taints the whole. So it's like this broad brush approach that we do, and it sort of waters down the real initiative that should be done. So my thinking on it is, I believe that what we need to be doing is educate, and we need to teach people to use the system the way it was designed to change it. And what I mean by that is we need to learn, because think about it. If you can ask anybody, when I say anybody, the average person, what is the latest, who won the football game? Or what is the latest thing on reality shows, or this thing on Netflix or whatever. They talk about all the entertainment. But
You're
not
so
many of us
right.
spend time about knowing about the political issues and the things that influence us. So while we sleep at the wheel, they're passing things that justify or get them where they can do this stuff and get away with it and make it legal. So
I see
to
what you're
me,
saying.
yeah. So in one way, we make these outcries. But just think about that. I mean, I ain't going to go. It's a lot of it in history. I'm only going to bring up a few. But in 1968, I believe, in April, when Martin Luther King got shot, I was in Washington, D.C. They were rioting in. What changed? Rodney King in 92, the beating in L.A. and all that. What changed? You follow what I'm saying? Now we're
Yeah,
here in
I do.
2020. So
It
what
hasn't.
I'm
It
saying
has
is that
not
when
changed.
right. So,
It has not
but we didn't
changed.
change either. We didn't educate. We didn't vote. As long as we get in our little creature conference, whether it's a new this, a new that, or how much money and who's
Yeah.
with this and I'm going. I mean, all of those surface things. Remember, I talked about belief and behavior.
Yes.
See,
Yes.
until we really change our view of God, I think that's what's not being talked about. We're not talking about where is He in the equation.
Yeah.
Where's the
No. Yeah. I'm not
fit with
hearing that
Him?
discussed. At all. I mean, I think there's churches going to God in prayer, and there's prayer rallies. But again, that's interesting. What is our belief in God and how God created us,
Yeah.
all of us. So, what do you wish people understood about racism? I mean, this is clearly an undercurrent in our society that is not going away anytime soon. And you spoke about educating ourselves. What do you think we should know more about racism?
I think, first of all, racism is a taught behavior. I think it's something, culturally or when we grow up and you get taught a certain way of how to treat people. But then there's an age where we mature and you become adults. Now you have to decide, do I believe that or does it work for me? You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, so I think one of the things we have to understand the difference in our growth or our maturity as to where we are. Are we still following things that my mom and dad taught me that may or may not have been right or may not work for me? Or am I willing to own this belief that I no longer believe that because my understanding? So I think there's a maturity level that has to be explored because if we're acting out on something that my dad did because he taught me this hatred or for people or that all of them were that, and you've not had that experience, that might not be the time to keep doing it. You might need to think that through. So I think a part of it is our own experiential journey of how we were raised and then making that difference in our moral conduct and our ethics. And I think another deeper root to this is I was born black. I didn't get to choose should I be, Italian, Native American,
Mm-hmm.
Japanese. We don't get to choose our race. You
Right.
are who we are. So I'm saying, and the scripture tells me that I was uniquely and wonderfully created.
Yes.
I'm special.
Yes.
I have a purpose. It doesn't matter my race or color. It matters that who that image that He endowed every man, no matter what race He created them all, that we've been endowed with by Him. So now, when we start speaking about racism, do you see yourself in? I'm gonna use this since we're talking about what's the hot button now. But do we see ourselves as a black person? That I'm a black person? That I'm living in the world, or that I'm this? That I am this? That's your identity as being black, or do you see yourself as a man that was born black?
Hmm.
So I don't, like for me, I know what I am, but I don't walk around trying to say, well, I'm a black man. I'm a black man. Like when something happens, I'm black. Oh, you doing it because I'm black? No, come on, man. It's a lot of it's a lot of injustice going along with, and if you notice, it's been with every race. They did it with the Chinese when we were coming. They do it with Hispanics, and it does anything. It's always been that. But I
Mm-hmm.
think that's a way of dividing people. So I think we need to know who we are in our identity in the Lord, have that deeper
Amen.
rooted
Amen.
connection. And once you have that, it doesn't matter what someone else says. It really doesn't matter what they do per se. What matters is how do we live that out? Do I believe what I'm doing enough to go up and legislate for it? Am I willing to get out and vote? Am I willing to do the things that help create social change? Or is it just only that a problem when it doesn't go my way or things are not happening or when violence breaks out? It only
Yes.
occurs when death occurs. Because to me, I think, like I said, when you look at all of those occasions when we've had all of these outbreaks, nothing changed, but neither did we. We still go back to our same thing. So I think what we need to do is really do that personal thing. I think our lives won't change until we change how we see God.
I like
Because
that
when you take
statement.
him out of the equation, it doesn't matter what we do. It doesn't matter what we legislate. They'll find a way around it. We have to change how we see God when we start seeing each other being
Mm-hmm.
created in his image and that each person has value. It doesn't matter the color or the race.
Yes. I love how you put that. Each person has value. And I think sometimes we're so used to living in our own little bubble, in our own little like world with our creature comforts, as you said earlier, that we forget that each and every one of us is created in God's image and we each have value. I think that's such a powerful, powerful statement. So let me ask you this. Is there hope? Is there hope? Where do we go? Where do we go from here? There's so much unrest and it's absolutely devastating everything that's happening. Is there hope and what can we do?
I think, yes, there is hope. I think the thing that we need to do in order to have change, we have to change the root. And I think the root has to come with what we believe. What
Yes.
we believe most of all about God and what we believe about ourselves. And once we get those two straight, it changes how I treat other people. So when I get that part right, and I know that he loves me and I'm confirmed, it doesn't matter what you say about me. It doesn't matter how you act. I know in the end, I have a judge that will judge and make things right. And I'm willing to stand the course, even if it means I don't see it in my lifetime. You see the
Hmm.
difference in the piece where I'm going with this? So
Yes, I
maybe,
do.
because
I
like I
do.
just said, we had this back in '68. We had all this stuff. We've been through this before. So even if it means that I don't see that change in my lifetime, I know that the work that I've done has laid the pathway or the next brick for the person to stand on to go further with it to get some type of change. Now,
Hmm.
whether it be, well, I don't think it's gonna be that. I'm just saying it as a cliche. It won't. I don't see it as peace on earth because we know since the dawn of time, it's always been division. Whether it's the way people talk, I mean, it's always been that way.
Yes,
But we can make it to a point where people can be more accepting of others and get along in a better route than this. I believe there's a higher standard that we can live to, but that will require us to have a heart change. And that
I
change
agree.
only comes through seeing ourselves the way God says we created, all of us.
Q, this has been absolutely incredible. Just a good discussion, as I knew it would be. I think I had chills for most of our discussion here, and just listening to you talk about how we've got to change ourselves, and that starts with with changing how we looking at how we view God and His creation, which includes everyone, and so much of this is, you're right, it's taught behavior. So I've really been trying to listen and to learn. Do I have some behaviors in my life? Was I taught some things that, man, I need to make some changes? And what can I do every day to make a difference in someone else's life? What can I do to show love, to show kindness? And I think if we can get back to some of those basics, um, it's awful what's happening. But I think this discussion has been very healing for some, and I know that there's many people that will just be encouraged by your words. So I just want to thank you for being with us today. Um, let us know, how can someone connect with you if they're like, hey, I need to have a conversation, or I need prayer, or I need to connect with you. How can they get in touch with you?
They can email me at qbritt@cox.net. It's
Okay.
Q, the letter Q, BRITT, at Cox, COX, dot NET, net.
That's fantastic. And
And
guys, go
what,
ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I know I was just going to remind our listeners where they can connect with us on Facebook and Instagram at Inspire Healthy Harmony. And what were you going to say, Q?
The last I was going to say is, we're talking about this traumatic event and the big thing that's happened. But I think one of the major smaller things, but just as impactful, is how we get along with each other on a daily basis. Because right now, working in a hospital and in stores and stuff, people won't even get up from looking at their phones, walking across the street and all that. But
Yeah,
you know what I mean? But then, so I'm saying it starts way back in all those little behaviors. And
it
what we
does.
do then and how we become so self-absorbed that we don't focus on how we treat other people when it's a time to use it and it's a time not. And they hadn't been doing that. So I just think if we can start there, start learning, being observant or self-aware of our behaviors or how we treat others.
Yes, it's the perfect place to start. And it's the easiest place to start. Just our daily interactions with folks and just being kind, sharing a kind word. And I know a lot of people are wearing masks, and that gets a little bit tricky because you can't see someone's full face, but hey, we can still speak. We can still smile. A smile is shown in your eyes too, right?
That's
So
right.
we can do that. We can make a difference, and we can come together. We can listen. We can learn, and hopefully brighter days are ahead. So everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Q, thank you for joining us today. I appreciate you.
Hey, thank you, Jen. Love you very much, and I hope to see you all soon.
Yes, we love you guys. Guys, please remember again, connect with us on Facebook, on Instagram at Inspire Healthy Harmony. If this podcast resonated with you in any way, I encourage you, share it with a friend. We just want to keep those discussions going so that we can make this world a better place. So until we meet again, I hope you have a healthy and happy day. Bye, y'all.